For a kids show, Batman the Animated Series wasn't shy about covering some dark and mature themes. From Harvey Dent's mental health decline to the existential despair of I Am the Night, btas could get pretty dark at times. Arguably, some of the grimmest episodes would focus on very real-world societal issues, and one such episode is the subject of today's video. We're going to talk about Lloyd Ventrix, the Invisible Man from See No Evil, also known as Mojo. Before we get too far, there's a common misconception about Ventrix that I'd like to clear up. He is often mistakenly referred to as a btas original character, like Harley Quinn or Renee Montoya, when actually he's an adaptation of a Batman villain from the 1950s, Lloyd Ventrix, the Mirror Man. Now, the two characters are very distinct. In fact, if it wasn't for the similar sounding, though differently spelled names of the villain, the connection would be very hard to make. The comic book original, Lloyd Ventrix, is known as the Mirror Man. Now, Ventrix was a common criminal that aspired to be part of the costumed supervillain elite, but the problem was he didn't have any powers and couldn't think of an original gimmick. After accidentally breaking a mirror in prison, stealing a shard of it and using it to shine a light in a guard's eyes, allowing him to escape, Ventrix took the broken mirror as a sign, nay, an omen, and christened himself the Mirror Man. However, despite having a villainous codename, he still didn't have any powers or even a costume. He was pretty distinctive looking with a shiny bald head, thick glasses, and prominent overbite, so perhaps he didn't need the costume. Either way, emboldened by his new identity, Ventrix arranged for the theft of an experimental solar mirror and turned it onto a nearby ice rink. Ventrix planned to steal the box office from the ice rink and lure Batman to the scene of the crime, which is a very unconventional plan to say the least. Ventrix had stolen an electrical mirror that could be used to see behind objects, sort of like an X-ray, and would use it to try to scan Batman's face and learn his secret identity. Eventually he would succeed in peeking behind Batman's mask and learned that he was in fact Bruce Wayne. Anticipating this development, Batman arranged for an interview where he talked about all of the times he had been identified as Bruce Wayne and demonstrably proven not to be. When Ventrix made the announcement that Bruce Wayne was Batman, he was laughed out of the building. Enraged, Ventrix attempted to prove Batman was Bruce Wayne by scanning his face live on television, but Batman wore a second mask under his cowl that cancelled out the effect of Ventrix's device. Humiliated, Ventrix was dragged back to prison, all the while vowing to prove that Bruce Wayne was Batman. In his next appearance, Ventrix tried to prove that Bruce Wayne was Batman once again by having his men follow Bruce Wayne while he committed robberies. Batman was too quick for Ventrix's men and was able to escape their gaze and change into his costume. When a rare copy of Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass went on display at an event Bruce Wayne was scheduled to speak at, journalist Vicky Vale knew that this would be too much for the Mirror Man to resist, so she hired an actor to portray Wayne. When he was captured by Batman, Ventrix argued that the use of an actor was proof that Bruce Wayne was Batman. Bruce Wayne was summoned to the scene to disprove the claims and would once again discredit Ventrix, and he would be carted off to prison. Turns out Alfred had dressed up as Batman to save Bruce's skin. So, if you're familiar with the events of the btas episode See No Evil, you can see that there are virtually no similarities between the two men, other than their similar sounding names and light-related gimmicks. Mirror Man would use mirrors to reflect light back at people, whereas Lloyd Ventrix, Mojo the Invisible Man, would refract light to become invisible to the naked eye. The differences between the two are so stark that Lloyd Ventrix may as well be an entirely original character. Lloyd was a petty criminal that had dreams of being a big shot. However, he was sent to prison for robbing all-night gas stations. Once he got out, he took a job as a lab assistant, or errand boy really, at an optics lab where the lead scientist, Dr. Karros, was working on a cloak of invisibility, an advanced plastic that was able to refract light when an electric current ran through it. Unfortunately, while invisible, the plastic would become highly toxic. Karros had looked to partner with Wayne Enterprises, but once he realised the flaw in the material, he pulled out and was never heard from again. We learn later on that he had passed away and his assistant Sam Goodell had been trying to correct the error. Thinking that Goodell was the Invisible Man, Batman confronted him, but was informed that Goodell had been working to destroy the plastic because of how dangerous it was. Goodell also told Batman about the errand boy, Ventrix, and how a small amount of the material seemed to be missing. I find it quite interesting that they don't state how Karros had died. I think it's safe to assume that he died as a result of exposure to his plastic, but could he have been killed by Ventrix when he stole the material? Maybe. As an aside, this reference to the toxicity of the material is a deliberate callback to H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man, in which the invisibility formula had the unpleasant side effect of driving the user insane. And what was Ventrix doing with this material? He had crafted himself a suit that would allow him to become invisible. As well as using his newfound power to steal jewellery, he was secretly meeting his estranged daughter, Kimmy, pretending to be her imaginary friend, Mojo. As an amusing aside, Kimmy was voiced by a young Elizabeth Moss, who would go on to star in the thriller The Invisible Man in 2020. Ventrix had a restraining order placed on him by his wife Helen, preventing him from going within 100 feet of her and their daughter, and he delights in violating the restraining order to have a secret relationship with Kimmy. Men like Ventrix feel like the rules do not apply to them, that they are somehow entitled to do whatever they please, regardless of who they hurt. We're never told exactly why the restraining order was placed on him, but when he attempts to schmooze Helen, he admits that when he was a low-level bum, the restraining order was necessary, but now he's a big shot, everything is different. The only reason why he's even speaking to Helen is because Kimmy told him, as Mojo, that they were moving away soon, and it's completely understandable why Helen would want to move somewhere else. This is Gotham City after all. Even in the suburbs where the sky is blue rather than the hellish red of the inner city, Helen's neighbourhood is in a state of decline. And there's a really telling exchange during this scene where Ventrix asks Helen to allow him to have a relationship with his daughter.
Come on, babe, if you could just let her see me.
Note that he said, "Let her see me," implying that he has already seen her, she just doesn't know it. It's not about her life being enriched with his involvement, it's all about him and how he feels about himself. Ventrix's ultimate goal is to be involved in his daughter's life, but he has been removed from it for a very good reason. By his own admission, he was a violent criminal, and you could argue that he has paid his debt to society and should be given another chance. And yet, when he confronts Helen, he acts as if he is wealthy and successful. Helen knows that he has only recently got out of prison, so the only way he could have achieved that level of success is through criminality. He hasn't changed, despite what he claims. He just dresses better, and he should be kept away from his daughter at all costs. Being kept away from his daughter makes him feel like a failure, and his response to these feelings is to lash out. This is a very difficult topic that is very much based in reality. Fathers should be involved in their children's lives. However, when they pose a risk to their family, the children should be protected from them. The courts do not grant restraining orders without good cause, and Ventrix is demonstrably still a bad man, even if he claims to have noble intentions to give his daughter a better life. In reality, he's only thinking of himself. Ventrix's take on what it means to be a successful man is as toxic as his invisibility suit. He values money and status and thinks that other people will respect him if he dresses nicely and has money. And in reality, sure, money and status will earn you a certain amount of respect from some equally shallow people, but the surefire way to earn respect and adoration is to be a decent person. Towards the end of the episode, when Batman confronts Ventrix, telling him that the suit is killing him, Ventrix says that he doesn't care. He'd rather die than live out the rest of his life as what he views to be a failure. I can't help but think that if he hadn't made such a show of his newfound wealth, if he had come to Helen dressed normally, told her that he had a job as a lab assistant and wanted to change, that things might have gone better for him. But he can't help himself. He has to lie. And he delights in misleading people. While he's invisible, he goes out of his way to push people around unnecessarily. They have no idea he's there, they're not blocking his way out, but he enjoys the power he has over them. Now, having said all that doesn't mean that people can never change. Of course they can, but it's a lengthy process. It doesn't happen overnight, and there will be relapses along the way. Helen, quite rightly, refuses to allow him near Kimmy, so Ventrix ups the ante by snatching her. He presents himself as her kindly friend Mojo, then picks her up and leads her away to his car. Kimmy knows that getting into cars with strangers is a bad idea, so Ventrix tells her that he's her father in the hopes that she'll come around. Of course, Kimmy reacts negatively to him, and he quickly loses his temper with her, illustrating how necessary that restraining order was. The moment he removes the mask and shows his true face, we can see his real reactions, anger and threats towards Kimmy when she resists going with him. The facade of kindly old Mojo drops, and instead we see his snarling head floating in the air as he gnashes his teeth, demanding that Kimmy does as she's told. Ventrix clearly feels empowered by his anonymity as Mojo the Invisible Man. He's a deeply insecure person that feels the need to prove what a big shot he is and how tough he is, when really the key to his daughter's heart would be earned through affection and kindness. He is clearly capable of it, as he brings Kimmy gifts such as the necklace from the opening of the episode, although in that case it feels more like a bribe to buy her affections. Of course, Batman shows up to put a stop to Ventrix, but it's depressing to think about how similar scenarios of abusive parents don't get interrupted by a hero in a cape and a cowl. There's a neat comparison to be made between Batman and Ventrix. While they both wear costumes to hide their identity and allow them to act as their true selves, Batman is kind and responsible. He clearly feels some kinship with children, as seen at the end of the episode, where he has a conversation with Kimmy through her bedroom window. Kimmy wouldn't be the last child that Batman would go out of his way to help, not by a long shot. Where Batman had his family cruelly taken away from him, Ventrix's cruelty resulted in him being removed from his family. They both feel loss, but what they do with those negative feelings is entirely the opposite. Ventrix is selfish and tries to force Kimmy to have a relationship, despite what the courts have ordered. Batman, meanwhile, dedicates himself to helping other people like Helen and Kimmy, to prevent them from feeling the way that he feels. It is also worth pointing out that Ventrix is well aware that his suit will kill him, but he'd rather die as a big shot and by his own hands than live as a failure. This episode is pretty heavy, and it's impressive that they were able to navigate the rules and regulations of kids' cartoons to deliver it. Having said that, it's not without its lighter moments. Paul Dini has previously spoken about how necessary moments of comedy are when writing dark scripts. Think of the keys scene from Heart of Ice. It breaks the tension and alleviates some of the dourness. See No Evil has its fair share of comedic moments, from the unfortunate security guard that just wants to go to the toilet, but both Ventrix and Batman lock the door while changing into their costumes, to the oblivious construction worker just trying to enjoy his lunch when Batman starts yelling at the Invisible Man. And I always feel a tinge of pain when I see that delicious looking sandwich fall. But my absolute favourite joke comes from the thrilling scene where Batman is hanging on to Ventrix's invisible car. To everyone else it looks like Batman is flying through the streets, but we know what's really happening. Two homeless people look on in shock before remarking,
I didn't know he could fly, too.
Now that is a great joke, especially considering later events. The writer for this episode, Martin Pascoe, was deeply familiar with Batman, having written his adventures in the comics. He also wrote the outline for Feet of Clay and edited the scripts for the two-parter. That was a bleak story, completely without humour, and perfectly illustrated Dini's point. Still, See No Evil is a very powerful episode of Batman the Animated Series, and is genuinely quite chilling. The issues of abusive parents and absent fathers are very much real-world problems. They've just been framed through a science fiction lens via the use of an invisibility suit. And it does what some of the best science fiction does, uses the fantastical to get us to examine the real world. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. Next week, I'm going to revisit my Superman the Animated Series poll from a couple of months back and talk about the villain that came in last place. Don't let that put you off, though. He's a very interesting rogue for the Man of Steel, especially if you like body horror. We're going to talk about Metallo. Hope to see you then.